David shivered, his breath visible in the cold night air. The late night air was chilly, biting through his thin sweater and making him wish he had stayed inside. He pulled his sweater tighter around himself, trying to ward off the cold that seemed to seep into his very bones. His phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him. He pulled it out to see an unknown number flashing on the screen. The text message sent a chill down his spine. It read, "I'm watching you." The words seemed to echo in his mind. He chuckled nervously, trying to shake off the unease. Must be a prank, he thought. Some kids messing around. He glanced at the darkened windows of the houses around him, just the neighbor's porch light casting long, eerie shadows. He peeked through the blinds of his own window, heart pounding. Nobody there, just the empty street. Another buzz. Same number. This time a picture, his house, taken from the street. The angle was unmistakable, but the streetlights were off and the photo was recent. Taken tonight. David's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. Someone was out there watching him right now. He checked the locks on the doors twice, then the windows. His heart pounded in his chest. He peered into the darkness outside, searching for any movement. The silence was unnerving. He tried to rationalize. It had to be a prank, a cruel joke. But the photo, his mind raced. He couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. He moved through the house, checking every room. Empty. He locked himself in his bedroom, the phone clutched in his clammy hand. He stared at the last text. "You should see your face." The words mocked him. He was letting this get to him. It was just some teenagers trying to scare him. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. He tried to ignore the phone. Tried to focus on something else, anything else. But the silence was broken by another buzz. "Don't worry, I'm closer than you think." He jumped, dropping the phone. It clattered on the floor. He stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. He was trapped in a nightmare. Section 4, face to face with fear. He snatched up the phone, his hands shaking uncontrollably. His heart pounded in his chest as he typed furiously, each keystroke echoing his growing anxiety. "Who are you? What do you want?" His mind raced with questions. The reply came instantly, almost as if it had been waiting for him. "Look in the mirror." The word sent a chill down his spine. He didn't want to. He knew he shouldn't. The mirror had always been a source of unease for him, but some unseen force compelled him. He slowly turned towards the antique mirror on his dresser, its ornate frame glinting ominously in the dim light. His reflection stared back at him, eyes wide with fear. And then it moved. Not just a simple shift, but a deliberate, unsettling motion. A figure, shrouded in darkness, stood behind him in the reflection. Its presence was suffocating, filling the room with an oppressive dread. He whirled around, his breath catching in his throat. But there was nothing there. The room was empty, silent. He was alone, or was he? The question lingered in the air, heavy with uncertainty. His eyes darted back to the mirror, searching for any sign of the dark figure. The reflection showed only his own terrified face, but the feeling of being watched remained. Section 5, false hope, lingering dread. He backed away from the mirror, his heart pounding. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of the intruder. He had to get out of there. He stumbled towards the door, his hand reaching for the doorknob. But as he did, his phone buzzed again. He froze, a chill running down his spine. Leaving so soon? He knew then that escape was impossible. The intruder wasn't just in his house. The intruder was everywhere, always watching, always present. Section 6, alone in the darkness. He couldn't escape the feeling of eyes on him. It was as if the walls themselves were watching, closing in on him with every passing second. The air was thick with tension, making it hard to breathe. He felt a cold sweat trickle down his back, his heart pounding in his chest. Every shadow seemed to move, dancing in the corners of his vision. They twisted and turned, taking on shapes that his mind couldn't comprehend. The darkness played tricks on him, making him question what was real and what was just a figment of his imagination. Every creak of the house sent shivers down his spine. The old wooden floors groaned under an invisible weight. The walls seemed to whisper secrets he couldn't understand. Each sound was a reminder of his isolation, amplifying his fear. He was a prisoner in his own home. The once familiar surroundings now felt like a cage, trapping him in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The windows, which once let in the light, now seemed like barriers, keeping the outside world at bay. He tried to call for help, but the words caught in his throat. His voice, usually strong and confident, was now reduced to a mere whisper. The fear had taken hold of him, rendering him speechless. The phone slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. He was alone, utterly alone. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. He sank to the floor, his back against the wall. The cold surface was a harsh reminder of his reality. He pulled his knees to his chest, trying to make himself as small as possible, hoping to disappear into the shadows. He could feel the intruder's presence, a palpable weight in the air. It was as if the very atmosphere was pressing down on him, suffocating him with its intensity. He dared not move, fearing that any sudden motion would draw the intruder's attention. He closed his eyes, but the terror remained. The darkness behind his eyelids was no different from the darkness around him. It was filled with the same fears, the same anxieties. He could hear his own heartbeat, loud and frantic, echoing in the silence. The text messages had stopped. The lifeline he had clung to was now gone, leaving him in a void of uncertainty. Each unread message was a reminder of the outside world, a world that seemed so distant now. But the fear lingered, a constant reminder that he was being watched. Every glance over his shoulder, every flicker of movement in the corner of his eye, reinforced the feeling that he was not alone. The paranoia was overwhelming, consuming his every thought. He was never truly alone. The presence was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting. It was a silent observer, feeding off his fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. He knew that as long as he remained in the darkness, he would never escape its grasp.